We're now live. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon to Michael. It looks like Jake is already in the chat, so thank you for joining us. I am here with Michael Costella, who has recently taken the Army of Renown for Deathwatch to two different tournaments, one GT and then one Super Major. And at that Super Major, which is the Leicester, hope I pronounced that.
Leicester.
Leicester.
Yeah,
Okay. There's that American English there for you. Anyway, you came in 14th, which at first glance people would be like, "What? That doesn't seem that great." But there were 350 people there.
yeah.
So I
Pretty
would
nuts.
consider that pretty good personally. And I know even before the Army of Renown came out, you were crushing it at like the Factorum GTs and the RTTs, doing pretty well with an all infantry Deathwatch list, which is really cool. So you're not relying on those 6 Dreadnoughts
No.
to bring it home, which I greatly appreciate meta shakeups. So I'm excited to really talk to you, man. Looks like we have some more viewers already, so why don't we just get into it? I have seen you during your live streams of games for the Vanguard Tactics channel, which for anybody out there who hasn't checked that out yet, please do. It's a great group of coaches, and they have awesome live streamed content. So if you're used to like tabletop titans, that's kind of like that, but they actually explain what they're doing and why at a competitive way. So all right, I'll stop blabbling on now. Let's talk about you. How long have you been playing? Why'd you pick up Deathwatch? Ready, set, go.
Cool. So probably been playing for about a decade. I think I started in 4. Played the video game Fire Warrior, if you know it. Absolutely loved that video game. And then I started Tau, and Deathwatch weren't really an army at that point. But eventually I started trying to play Inquisition stuff, and I found out about this cool militant arm of the Ordo Xenos. These guys, these Deathwatch, where they take a guy from every chapter, slap a silver pad on him, paint him black, and send him out to do cool, missions. And I was like, I want to do that army, but it didn't exist. So I had all the metal conversion kits, and they were pretty bad. But I used to run like Vanguard veterans in drop pods and stuff, and just say, "Oh, these are my Deathwatch guys," but run them as like Ultramarines or something.
Gotcha.
And then eventually, what was the box set called that came out with the Kill Team? Overkill, I think it was Overkill. The Kill Team and the Gene Stealer Cult came out, and bam, we had new models, and then a Codex came soon after. And it was kind of like, Space Marines are cool. Some people might not agree. There's a lot of different chapters out there, and a lot of them are cool. I love Black Templars, I love Dark Angels, all of this stuff. But why not just play all of them in one army, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, it just sort of went from there. I've been playing them for a while. Went to a few tournaments, dropped them for a bit. I've got a few armies, but
Don't we all?
in 9th. Yeah, exactly right. It's an addiction. And then at the end of 8th, I started playing them a lot more. And then in 9th, of course, they got their supplement and so many more options. And it was just a perfect time to crack them out again. I just love them to bits.
Aren't you supposed to be mad about Storm Bolters losing special issue ammo? That's what
sorry,
everybody.
Yeah. Oh,
there you go.
Oh no, my Primaris Marines don't have special ammo.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. I'm glad we got that out of the way. So you've been playing a long time. I started right at the end of 8th, so like folks are talking about 4th and 5th, and I'm just like, I have no context, but sounds like it was great.
Yeah.
Is that when there was like still vehicle facings and?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, 8th and 9th, the game's only gotten better, and I really love 9th compared to some of the silly things that used to happen. You used to have invisible Wraith Knights that you could only hit on 6s, and they used to be able to just instantly remove models without having to, any saves or number of wounds accounted, and they would just stand on your army and kill it.
That sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, the game wasn't in a fantastic place. I'm glad about where it is now.
Cool. Well, I could ask you all kinds of questions about that, but that's not why we're here. Although I'll happily pick your brain later.
Yeah, of course.
So obviously, like I said earlier, you have been trying to make all infantry Deathwatch work for a while, and by trying to make, you've actually been having good luck. So, when the Army of Renown hit, and it's only like one page. I bought that whole book for 1 page or 1.5 pages. Or how did you feel? Like, was it like manna from heaven, and you got to be like, this is my day?
Yeah, so I had really mixed feelings. I had people message me, and I know a few of the NoobHammer guys, and they're like, "This is built for you, this Army of Renown," because I run all of these infantry kill teams. But I looked at it initially, and I probably had the same thoughts a lot of other people did. I can't run Dreadnoughts. I used to run maybe one Dreadnought every now and then, and it was really useful. Obviously, I used a lot of infantry, but the thing is, with the infantry, I would use like maybe 5 Hellblasters or 3 Inceptors. But of course, with the Army of Renown, you need to have the full kill team. So to take 3 Inceptors, I've got to take 5 heavy intercessors and 2 other things, and then combat squad. And there's a whole lot more investment and tax in order to take the units I used to take. So the Army of Renown looked a lot less efficient points wise for what you get from it. So it took me some time to sort of sit down and think, well, how can I write a list that doesn't lose too much from going away from the previous build to this new Army of Renown?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, the other thing that stood out to me, or was pointed out to me, I'm not so good at this game yet that all these things come flying out at me straight away. But one of the things that was pointed out is that by forcing us to buy specialisms, it makes our elite army even more expensive and more elite, especially at like I would have loved to see maybe like a half off discount because we have to take them, but it is what it is. But like 30 points for the Malleus and Fervor, I think it's 30 points for Fervor.
It is 30,
it's very expensive, so it's like, man, that's a whole Vanguard vet you don't get to put on the table,
Yeah, well, it's like a total of 100 points just spent on upgrading units that might not even affect the game.
Yeah, and 5 Deathwatch veterans, are like what?
Exactly.
100
points basically.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Well, I think this is a good transition, actually. We can get straight into this list, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, of course.
So, here we go. I will let you do the rundown, because folks aren't here to listen to me. They're here to listen to you. So why don't we just start at the top?
Yeah,
with your HQs.
So, we've got the hero himself, the bike chaplain. And I don't know if you see many of my lists, but he's in basically every single one.
He's very good.
He is very, very good. For 140 points when you upgrade him to a Master of Sanctity, he's so good. 7 wounds, Primaris, so he can transhuman, 4 up in Vun. Fantastic. And the main reason I picked him originally was because he could turbo boost 20 inches, and I stuck the Beacon Angelus on him, so he was a really good tool for moving around the board and getting early combats. But also his rerolls in combat, really, really useful for all the Thunderhammers, which we'll come on to later. And of course his +2 to charge. And then the third litany has always been, I've swapped it in and out depending what I wanted to do. But with the Army of Renown, because there's that 3 CP stratagem, I wanted to be able to shoot effectively. So he's got the +1 to hit with shooting litany on there.
Very cool. And then
Um,
Canticle of Hate, that's the charge one, right?
that's the charge when you Canticle of
Yeah.
Hate for +2 to charge, which also, and we can talk about this a bit more in sort of the technicalities. The +3 to pile in and consolidate, absolutely massive. I'd almost say comes in more than the bonus to charge. But yeah, you got Litany of Hate for rerolls, Canticle of Hate for that charge bonus, and then Recitation of Focus for +1 to hit with shooting on a single unit.
That's amazing.
And then of course he does litanies on 2s because he's a master orator. Because I'd like to reduce how often I fail that roll.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't think
Can't
it's made
reroll
a
them
difference.
anymore.
I've rolled ones plenty. But yeah, no, he's very good, and I don't see him leaving the list anytime soon.
Very cool. And I just want to remind all the viewers out here, if you have questions or anything that you'd like answered by either of us, let's be honest, by Michael, you can go ahead and leave a comment and we'll throw it on to the stream. So please jump in and get involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Primaris Chaplain, we've seen them everywhere. I've run them. Yeah, like you said, they're very, very good. And then you have, I think this is kind of funny on the list here in contrast with the Chaplain having everything, and then you've just got like sad Watchmaster with like nothing.
Yeah, so the Watchmaster is a bit of a maybe it's controversial. I don't know how people feel about Watchmasters. They're very expensive for what they give you. And they're only really giving you rerolls. Their gun's not very good. They don't really do much in combat, and their resilience isn't amazing. But he made the list because I wanted the rerolls. Sometimes I'd find I'd roll a 1 for combat, rerolls on the Chaplain, and this guy means I can just stick it on a unit, send them off, and then I can auto pass the litany for +2 charge, and I can make a turn 1 charge if I want to.
Which is pretty ridiculous.
It's amazing. Making things happen without having to roll is my kind of thing. And he also gives you that reroll ones aura. I need reroll ones obviously because I've got the Hellblasters in there, but also the Stormbolter unit, lots of shooting. Nice to have rerolls.
Before we get into those, one of my favorite units, the Ass Blasters, as I like to call them, and has now been making the rounds on the Deathwatch Discord because I won't let it go. I think it's a hilarious name. We do have a question. JP is asking about your opinion on the optimized priority warlord trait with the new mission objectives that have been previewed at the last, I think it was the New Orleans Open. Was that?
Yeah.
That was this last weekend. Yeah.
So I've looked at those in some depth, not loads. It depends how you build your list. Like, my list has a lot of combat in it, and obviously you can't fight and do actions. Sadly, I really wish you could because that'd be incredible.
It's shoot and do actions.
Yeah, shoot and do an action within 6. I think that's really valuable. Obviously, it depends who you put it on, and they need to be able to keep up with your units. I think it's going to be particularly useful if we look at the new investigate signals. So the holding the middle one. Even for me, if I can send a unit in there to do an action, let's say Hellblasters, they stand in the middle, they shoot something, do an action, and then maybe a combat kill team comes in and pushes off an enemy unit from the middle. I actually think investigate signals is quite a nice one to look at the moment. So you do an action in the middle of the board, and provided that there's no enemy unit within 6 inches of the middle of the board, by the end of your turn, you'll get 3 points and that action will be completed. Yes, the new changes to that make that really appealing, especially with Retrieve Octarius data changing now.
Retrieve Nachman's data.
Yeah, Nachman data.
Nachman. So, investigate signal. I should have been ready for these questions. I was not, so I had to pull it up real quick. So the biggest change is that now you can do it with enemy units within 6 inches, which was not possible before. The caveat still is that at the end of your turn, there must be
Yeah.
no enemy models
Yeah.
except flyers
Exactly.
within that area.
Yeah.
So you have to push up, take the middle, start your action, and then kick
Yeah.
everyone else's ass and hold the objective.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because obviously, Oath, you've got to do stuff in the middle as well for Oath of Moment. So they stack quite well. I think Investigate Sites is an interesting one to do on a map that doesn't have an objective in the middle, because then your opponent's sort of got to divert their assets into the middle just to stop you from doing it with, say, I don't know, a unit of infiltrators or some other expendable unit.
In response, don't you as well? Like now you're also and by taking Oath and Investigate Sites, you're telegraphing to your opponent, like, I need the middle. The middle is mine. And then they know, okay, well, I have to come after you for no other reason than to stop you from scoring, right? So
yeah. So
very cool.
Yeah, I might end up taking it, but probably I would only take it on missions where there is an objective in the middle, just because I find with the Army of Renown you don't actually have that many assets, so you have to be quite smart with it. New teleport homers maybe, so troops can do it, and obviously our kill teams are troops, and that's within the enemy deployment zone or on the edge of the enemy deployment zone, and that's completed at the end of the turn now. So if you can play aggressive and get into that enemy deployment zone, then that might be a great one to tie in with optimized priority. But overall, in my list, I don't do many actions, so optimized priority isn't a great choice.
Yeah, I'm glad that deploy teleport homers is no longer just the worst choice between it and Rod. Like, because the two of them, when you contrasted them, you're like, why would I ever take teleport homers?
Yeah.
This is silly. But now it's kind of like the old Rod in a way, and then retrieve Nukman data is its own, which we're gonna call Rand.
Yeah.
Rund.
Rind.
Rind. I don't know. All right. Well, thank you for your question, JP. In the Army of Renown specifically, and I don't see it in your list, so you probably don't find it all that useful, but for a shooting list I'm putting together, I always thought the Xenos Hunter Warlord trait that's specific for the Army of Renown sounded super cool, because you can double dip. Right, so the Army of Renown allows us to choose any chapter tactic at the start of the turn. So let's say White Scars or whatever, right? Or Imperial Fists, probably for a shooting army is more apt. But then the Xenos Hunter Warlord trait means that everybody around that Warlord still gets the Xenos Hunter chapter tactic. So they're still re-rolling, ones against whatever troop or whatever battlefield role you've picked at the beginning of the game. I don't know if you've played with that at all. It doesn't seem that great for you. Well, your warlord is right up there with you.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think in the end, I sort of sat back, look at the list, and it is something we teach on the academy. But if you don't need something, then think about what you could have instead. And I looked at it and I was like, it's 3 CP to auto wound. Those CP have got to come from somewhere, and I absolutely have to take the 2+ litany thing.
Oh, so, I guess that's true. Yeah.
I don't need Xenos Hunters.
Right.
After all, if I auto wound, I don't need to reroll ones to wound, right?
Right.
So, and I think maybe on paper you underestimate how good the specialisms actually turn out to be. And I found that the specialisms actually kind of replace your Xenos Hunters that you're missing if you build it in certain ways, like I have in the list.
Yeah, no, those are all great points, especially when you take Aquila. I think you have 2 Aquila teams and 2 Dominatus teams. Yeah.
So
and 1 Malleus.
Yeah, 1 Malleus. And this is something I absolutely love about the list, and we'll talk about why I've chosen those specific specialisms. The Watchmaster has one last purpose, which
Oh,
actually
sorry.
into the current meta is quite big, and I think people maybe have overlooked it. So for 1 CP, he can make a vehicle unit in engagement range fight last. Okay, and obviously I've got a lot of combat.
Oh,
So
yeah, with
yeah, so he's
that
got a cheeky
relic.
stratagem. Yeah, because he's
Forgot
got his
all
little
about
thing on
it.
his arm.
Yeah, I forget what it's
You
called, but
can, yeah, you can spend 1 CP. It's called Clavis, the stratagem,
that's it.
and a vehicle unit in engagement range fights last and takes D3 mortal wounds. But if you look at what the balanced data slate did, there's a lot more knights in the game now. And obviously, Grey Knights, there's a lot of Dreadknights in the game now.
Tell
And
me
they're
about it.
vehicles. So it's quite a cheeky thing to have.
Yeah.
Even orcs, it's pretty handy against orcs as well. I'll be absolutely honest, I didn't use it once this weekend. But I definitely would have if the opportunity arose in the Grey Knights game.
I don't even see it. I mean, it's not on the list. Was that a last minute addition? I grabbed this off of Best Coast Pairing.
So it's a stratagem. It's not a relic. It's not a relic or warlord trait. It's just a stratagem.
I thought you had to have the relic that was the same thing. But okay.
No, so the relic does something slightly different.
Gotcha.
It's like maybe a buffed up version. I haven't really looked at the relic because I didn't really take a Watchmaster before. But the stratagem is very cheeky, and it's 1 CP, which is great for fight last.
JP dropping the hammer. Okay. So JP says that the Octarius FAQ is out. I didn't know that. I haven't seen it. And Modern Veteran of the Watch only affects the Sergeant, which we will get to later because I thought that was a super cool bit of tech that you had added to your list. So, but we will talk all about that here in a moment. All right, so 1 CP stratagem.
Yeah.
The Clavis, regardless of the relic. Okay, that is very cool. Yeah. Are Talos's vehicles?
Sadly not. Sadly not.
Is it Talos's?
Talos. Yeah, Talos.
Tali?
They're monsters.
Okay. Right, monsters. All right, tell me about your ass blasters.
Okay, so it's an Aquila kill team. It's got the 5 intercessors and it's got 5 assault hellblasters. So I've been running a lot of assault hellblasters, well, not a lot, but I've been running assault hellblasters or ass blasters quite a lot. And I find that they have been really good in previous metas, picking up Grey Knight strike squads, other Marines. They're fantastic at doing that, and Sisters of Battle as well. When we used to see loads of Sisters of Battle, because you could just fire without overcharging, 15 wounds.
Yeah,
into
at -4.
-4. Wounded on 2s, rerolling 1s to wound. Really, really good. The issue, of course, was that I had to take 5 intercessors, but they serve purposes in the game, sitting on objectives and things.
Do you combat squad then?
Sometimes. Yeah,
okay.
Sometimes. So
yeah.
It depends. It depends on the matchup.
Right.
Whether I think. Oh, you go on.
It's frustrating from an interview standpoint because you want folks to have yes, I always combat squad, right? But I know that the way Deathwatch plays, all of it is depending on the matchup. Every bit about how you play. And that's true for most armies, but especially for Deathwatch because we have so many choices to make before the game even starts based on the matchup. We got to pick a doctrine. We got to pick a chapter tactic, in this case with the Army of Renown. We got to know, we got to pick what Aquila kill teams are going to kill against. And all of that will be different based on your matchup. So, So I have found that they're great to stand in front of the Hell Blasters and be ablative wounds because your opponent wants to kill them, and by putting those wounds in front of them, they don't get to kill them as fast.
So in most of my matchups, I usually do combat squad, just because I need the intercessors to sit on an objective or move around. In other matchups, let's say maybe there's lots of indirect shooting, and I need to keep the Hellblasters alive. Or let's say there's multiple big targets that I'll need my 3 CP auto wound strat into. Then I might keep them together, teleport them, and then spend 3 CP, and I just get those 15 extra shots from the intercessors.
I didn't even think about that with the auto win strat. That's incredible. Yeah, that's so much shooting.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can, if you need to, you can like move up with your chaplain, use the
Mhm.
beacon Angelus, who's and then move up this Fortis kill team who's received all rerolls from the Watchmaster,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
just go to town. Although I guess you would
Yep.
probably move up a melee team again, depending on the matchup, right?
Well, yeah. So the melee teams are surprisingly fast. But the thing is with the shooting, the great thing about Assault Hellblasters is they've got 24-inch range, which
Mm-hmm.
on the board sizes at the moment, that's really, really good range. So you stick the chaplains +1 to hit on them, and then you can stick rerolls from the Watchmaster on them, and then you can teleport them to where the chaplain is. And then the key to that is because they've got Watchmaster rerolls, they don't need to end up within 6 inches of where the Watchmaster is later
Right.
to reroll those ones for overheating, because they've got full rerolls. So even though they're hitting on twos, you allow them to reroll the ones to hit, so they don't die. So it's a nice trick
Yeah.
to have, basically. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'm really stoked to see some Hell Blasters in the meta right now, like doing well, because I just love those models. It's a completely like selfish reason, but anything else you wanna? Oh, well, actually, let's talk about the Aquila. So you have to pick, obviously, at the start of the game.
Yeah.
Which your what battlefield role your Aquillas are
Yes.
gonna get re-rolls against. So what's your mental process for that?
So I mean, there's a lot to remember, but basically, you want to pick something that your Hellblasters are going to be good into or want to shoot at. Usually, that's an elite's choice. Maybe Vanguard veterans if you're playing against Space Marines, or Sacrosancts if you're playing Sisters of Battle. I know I've used them and shot into Meganobs, for example. So it's basically the thing that you're going to be shooting with them without the auto wound strat, because obviously the auto wound strat can go into any target when you're Aquila. So don't pick the thing that you're going to auto wound when you choose your Aquila, is what I'm saying. And it's okay, and I usually do. It's okay to pick the same battlefield role that you picked for Xenos Hunters, because you still have to pick Xenos Hunters, but you're going to end up replacing it with a chapter tactic, and then because you're Aquila, you get the reroll ones to wound it anyway. So in reality, you're not really losing Xenos Hunters because you've still got reroll ones to wound against the target.
Yeah.
You're just gaining a chapter tactic as well.
Also, let's not forget one of the benefits of the Aquila specialism anyway, which is the cheapest.
Yes.
It's only 15 points, so.
Ironically, it's the most useful in the Army of Renown, but it's also the cheapest.
So we did get our half off, basically.
So, yeah, basically.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to talk about for the Hellblaster team, or shall we move on to the first Proteus team?
Yeah, happy to move on, yeah.
Okay, well, we're about to get into that discussion about the Arctarius fact, so because this is the melee team that you have the sergeant with honored veteran of the Watch on there, so
yeah,
why don't we take it away?
Yeah, so I mean, there's three of these kill teams. They're all very similar. The sergeant's always got a heavy thunderhammer. The black shield's usually got, well, 2 combat weapons, a hammer and a chainsword, which gives him 5 thunderhammer attacks. And because of his innate 2+ weapon skill, he's hitting on 3s with those thunderhammers. And I just think from one model, that's a lot of thunderhammers, and that's a lot of damage. So yeah, I absolutely love my black shields and my sergeants. We got some guys with shields to take hits. The bolt guns are always useful as well. We've got 2 Terminators with shields. They're fantastic. Keep the unit alive, sit them in cover. You can basically get a 2-up save against AP2 shots, which is incredible. Fantastic in the Thousand Suns matchup as well. And then you've got a Vanguard veteran who gives you melter bombs on the unit. I don't know if people realize quite how useful that is, but into vehicles, a hit is 2d3 mortal wounds from having the Vanguard veteran in the squad, and he doesn't even need to do the attack that has the melter bomb. You can just get one of the guys to hold his grenade for him and stick it on the vehicle while he continues to chop through the enemy.
Beautiful.
And then finally we've got a biker, who for 1 CP obviously lets me fall back and charge, which is incredibly useful for me, because then you get to sort of fight first in combat and you get the extra movement. Yeah, and then the hidden thing about these big Proteus squads is actually how far they move. So obviously we have to maintain coherency, but if you deploy with a normal Marine at the front, and then you have your biker and your Vanguard vet stay behind him, your normal Marine moves 6 inches, and then your biker moves up to the back of his base is within 2 inches of that front Marine. Yeah, and then your Vanguard vet moves up to be within 2 inches of that front Marine and the biker. And that way you've kept coherency with that triangle. Obviously the rest of the unit follows up. And you've actually ended up with about an 11-inch move with this unit, which is fast. And obviously once they get to combat, their charge boosts the rest of the unit up. And then this is where that kicker pile-in bonus comes in. Oh no, my Terminators are at the back of the unit. They're not going to get to fight. Well, I've got my big base on my biker, and my Terminators are moving 6 inches with the pile-in. So they're going to fight through the biker into the unit I'm fighting.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit of technical play, but it's very, very, very useful.
No, I think it's great. It's one of those, again, like Deathwatch is a high skill ceiling army, I think, because of those little nuanced plays that other armies don't get. There's no other army I can think of that mixes troop types. So we have to always be thinking, and then, you can like move block yourself by accident because the biker can't go through other models, but the jetpack guy can. So you always have to be thinking like, where am I going to move and how am I going to move there? But yes, you are right. And then all the cheeky play you can do with that long base on those bikers too. Mm-hmm. So like the biker can be in coherency, and then if one of those fat Terminators can't make it, they just have to get up within half an inch of the base of the biker. And even though they're like 3 inches away from the combat, they can actually swing in. So yeah, there's all these little nuanced plays. So that's fantastic. And I think those are the kinds of skills that really make a Deathwatch player, really, really good. And if your opponent has never played or not played much Deathwatch before, it can really catch them off guard too.
Yeah, absolutely. Then I guess onto the Sergeant. I mean, if you could have a damage 4 Thunderhammer, I mean, it's expensive, right? You're not going to give it to everybody in the squad. But your Sergeant gets 4 attacks on the charge. That's 16 damage.
Yeah.
That he could do. I've had one game where a Sergeant's been the lone survivor of a squad, and he's walked up to an Invicta warsuit and just smashed it. One man. Amazing.
Yes, so that is amazing.
I think that's probably one of the coolest things about Deathwatch is each guy in a kill team can do something so epic on their own. Yes.
This is kind of a meme pick, but with the Army of Renown and this command point stratagem for honored veteran of the watch, if I remember right, you could actually give them a mastercrafted heavy Thunderhammer. I'm not saying it's particularly good, but 5 damage Thunderhammer is pretty cheeky.
I found the damage 4 Thunderhammers came in after I lost a game into Death Guard some time ago, and I realized that I could pick up Terminators reliably with a damage 4 Thunderhammer.
Yeah, that drives my one of my friends who plays Death Guard, and he loves his Terminators. That drives him nuts. He's like, "Oh no, you have the heavy Thunderhammers, huh?" I'm like, "Yep." Don't care about your -1.
The other thing as well is the fact it's AP3 base. That's a very small change, but it does mean they're AP4 in Assault Doctrine, which means they cut through anything that doesn't have an invuln usually, which is huge. You go into let's say a tank, and suddenly, or a Dreadnought. I'll be honest, most of the work that these heavy Thunderhammers do is against Dreadnoughts, funnily enough, in the mirror matches against Deathwatch or against Iron Hands, etc. And we just swing in with these AP4 flat 4 damage hammers, and these Dreadnoughts don't stand a chance.
Yeah, you're gonna. I mean, at the very least, you're gonna start degrading them and making them a lot less of a threat. So, with the new information, I don't know if you had read that yet either.
No.
With the Octarius Fac and Honored Veteran of the Watch only affecting the Sergeant. So I know originally you had that on this team because it gave the whole team fight first. That's what speed of the Primarch is. I don't know how you would play that. Only the Sergeant has fight
It's an
first?
odd one. I'm not sure how I feel about how they've ruled it because I don't know how many people know AdMech very well, but you can take upgrades on the sergeants for AdMech. So you could take reroll charges on as a warlord trait for an AdMech sergeant, and then suddenly their entire unit rerolls charges. And I haven't seen anything to change that. So it seems a bit odd that we'd get a different treatment. But it is an easy fix to people trying to pretend that maybe they get the Crimson Fist trait for their entire kill team. So to remind you, the Crimson Fist trait is if the model dies on a 4+, they come back with D3 wounds. And if you can imagine trying to get away with that at a tournament, or even against a mate, you're like, oh, my 300-point units just died, 4 up. Right, well, they're all back with D3 wounds each.
Oh, man.
Fun.
What a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is an interesting one because it might seem like a subtle change to people who don't really look at combat too much and how good Fight First is. But that is going to hurt my list, and I may have to look at ways of getting Fight First back in there.
I was actually just going to ask, like, knowing what you know now, and I realize that this has been sprung on you, so it's not like you've had a whole lot of time to really think about it, but, I mean, you had to have had a backup plan, right? Like, if you went to a tournament and the TO is like, no, it only affects the Sergeant, that model, you had to have thought about that and then been like, oh, well then what was your game plan?
Yeah, well, my usually my defense is, that AdMech can do it. Right, and nobody complained about that. That's fine.
We're seeing this a lot now.
Traits.
Like
some warlord traits.
Black Templar can do it now too.
Black Templars, yes, Black Templars can do it as well. The thing is, some of the warlord traits don't work unless the whole unit can do them, like Fight Last, or there's the Heroic Intervention 6 inches, whereas other ones obviously quite clearly only affect the Sergeant, like the Crimson Fist one, or like the one people have been doing, the extra wound and 6s ignore wounds, which is hilarious. And those clearly only affect one model. Interesting to see where we go with this in terms of list writing. You'll get to watch me in real time digest how I'm going to change this list. And I can tell you now, I'm probably going to be putting a librarian back in for Fight First.
Are you? Oh man, okay. We're gonna hold off on that cliffhanger for about 10 seconds. I want to remind everybody in chat again. Please give us any questions you have, comments, whatever. We're live streaming so you can interact with us. Now back to the librarian. If you put a librarian in there, I mean, there are 2 pretty good armies that you're now giving up your best secondary against them. There's Grey Knights, I'm a Grey Knight player as well. And then there's Thousand Suns, and you're thinking that the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'll run through sort of why. So previous to the Army of Renown, I was running a librarian. And I haven't yet in 9th lost a game against Grey Knights. With or without Abhor the Witch, and I don't want to sound arrogant by saying that. It's just the raw power of what's in the list compared to Grey Knights sort of offsets the fact I can't take Abhor the Witch. Sometimes it's nice not to rely on quite an easy secondary. Against Thousand Suns as well, the Deathwatch list, because of the Terminators with Storm Shields in cover, ignoring AP2, Thousand Suns really do struggle into my list. And then, of course, they're Mortal Wounds. I can bounce them off now using Black Templars or the Warded Successor trait, and that, so if anything, the list has gotten better into those two matchups. But I dropped the Librarian just to surefire give me that secondary. And the only reason I dropped the Librarian was because I had Fight First on my Sergeant. And you're probably thinking, why? Fight First isn't that great. Well, I can describe a situation in one of my games actually this weekend where Fight First came in to be incredible. In my 5th game against the eventual 2nd place, Drazar charged one of my Proteus kill teams.
Fucking Drazar, man.
Yeah, Drazar got in. Now, he didn't succeed the role, but he could easily have succeeded Tormentors. He could also have sent his Fight Last Archon in there as well. And then, of course, Drazar's going to fight twice. The Archon's going to fight potentially twice. There's a Succubus as well with a ludicrous Triptych Whip, who can pick up Marines for days. But what Fight First means is that even if Fight Last is put on you, you can now interrupt, because Fight First cancels out Fight Last, and you fight in normal order, which means Drazar fought once, I then interrupted, and I killed Drazar.
For free, without spending CP, which is a big deal. And then you can still also interrupt with another team if you need to later.
Yes, so yes, just to reiterate, if I had been made to fight last, I would have to spend the CP to interrupt, because they took away my Fight First. But if they hadn't made me fight last, I would interrupt for free, which is what happened in this case, because Drazar bounced off my Storm Shields, and I actually only lost 2 wounds to Drazar.
Ooh, that's gotta be, every time Drazar gets in on me, it's usually a bad day for me. I've actually never won against Drukhari with any of my armies against any opponents ever. I've got some work to do.
Well, Drukhari are a tough one to beat. I think the only reason, the London Grand Tournament, the 600-player one, the one game I dropped was against Drukhari, and that was actually because my Librarian failed the Fight First Psychic Power on my unit. Because what you do is you put your Fight First unit on the center objective, and then the Drukhari player has to decide, okay, well, I'm going to charge this with maybe Drazar and 2 Incubi units. I'll make you fight last. And then I'm there knowing full well I can interrupt even if I get made to fight last.
Yes.
Because I've got Fight First.
That's huge, actually.
And then Drazar fights once, maybe kills the 3 guys with Storm Shields, and then I interrupt, and as you may know, on the return, Incubi aren't particularly hard to kill.
No.
But I can kill Drazar and 2 Incubi units with what's left in the kill team. That's the Drukhari thing, right? If you can survive their like attacks, you can pretty clearly wipe them up. At least as Space Marines, right? Like even Space Marine punching, from like an intercessor squad, assuming they're alive when the combat phase starts, they can actually, or assuming they can swing back, they can actually do some decent damage. So absolutely,
that's very cool. I love that little tidbit that you just gave, where so fight last, usually that means you're just hosed, but if you have fight first, they just cancel out, and so you can interrupt like normal if you need to. And it's crazy powerful. Good tip. Great tip.
I didn't mean to. You go on.
I was gonna say, the last Star Strider is asking you about your teams and mixed war gear. We're about to get into the second Proteus kill team now, which is also a melee team, and you can already see on the screen that there are different war gear loadouts between these teams. So I don't know how you keep that straight, Michael. You just must have a much more organized brain than I do. I like to try to keep all my kill teams as identical as possible, and that way I have less to remember. But for instance, it looks like you have your black shield in this team has 2 lightning claws, not a thunder hammer, and a chainsword. I assume that was just for points. You didn't quite have enough for Another Thunder Hammer.
Well, so I used to run 2 squads with Black Shields with Lightning Claws, but then I found, as the meta's moved on, I need more hard-hitting Thunder Hammers. If you put a Black Shield with a hammer and chainsword in the unit, so say the first kill team, that's 15 Thunder Hammer attacks. Not many things survive that. But it's actually really nice having a team where one Black Shield has double Lightning Claws. He's got 7 attacks on his own.
Yep. Rerolling wounds.
Rerolling wounds, hitting on 2's base. He's no joke. And it's nice to be able to kill hordes as well as hit things with hammers. So he's just in there for that option.
Yeah, that's really, really great. Oh, actually, I wanted to ask you. So I love seeing all the Black Shields in these teams, and obviously we have it in our back pocket, the heroic intervention for 1 CP, which is probably bonkers. When 3 teams, I mean, obviously you can't do it all in the same phase with all 3, but like, how often does that just kick your opponent in the teeth? And I know you probably go through an army rundown and let them know, hey, all of these guys can heroically intervene, but I mean, how's that work with your opponents?
It's an interesting one. Obviously, I like to be transparent with all of my opponents. I'll tell them what each thing in a mixed squad does. Usually, even if you've only got the smallest idea of what Deathwatch does, you remember that different models give different abilities to the units. And I don't really want to win a game on a sort of gotcha,
No, absolutely not.
So, I'd rather present situations where the only way they could do something is in a situation where I can intervene, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So a really good example of this is in the 4th game at Leicester GT. And this is where I played fellow Vanguard Tactics coach and all-round great guy, Ben Jones, and his Meat Mountain. And what I did, I went first, which wasn't ideal, A lot of top players will say they really want to go second.
I agree. Well, not all the time, but most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. is we set up with the Judicia at the front of the unit, right? So the Judicia we'll come to later at the front of the unit, and then the kill team sits around him, sort of in a U, almost just caressing his back as he holds that objective.
Sad.
And what it does is it tempts people to try and just charge the Judicia to get rid of him. And if they don't ask me, well, fight last is very strong on the Judicia.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So you could try it. However, for 1 CP, I'm going to heroically intervene with the whole kill team. So now you're fighting last, and I'm going to hit you with 15 Thunder Hammers. So the heroic intervention is huge there. It's also huge when you're defending objectives. Say you're standing in the center of an objective. Nobody can take it off you because you'll just heroically intervene into them. So it's a very strong denial ability, really. And of course, if it does catch someone off guard, it's usually a game-swinging moment because of how many points are invested in that unit that's intervening.
Yeah. I mean, it is, all of these units are fantastically expensive. I mean, your cheapest kill team on here is 294 points. I mean, that's like almost a Telemon.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And your most expensive is 340 points. So, I mean, there's a lot in here for you are sinking, again, as I said at the beginning, like, you're sinking a lot of points, especially with these upgrades. These specialisms make them even more expensive. So Jack Frazier is asking, he wants to pick your brain about how you kill Grey Knights. And Jack, I have we're gonna get into all of his matchups, and round 2, if I remember right, is into a 6 Dreadknight Grey Knight list. So if you stick around, Michael will spill the beans on how he murders Grey Knights. He did just say, I think right before you joined, that he's never lost against Grey Knights with Deathwatch. So, there you go. If you want to ask somebody, it seems to be Michael. All right, and then we'll jump down to your third Proteus kill team here. Your third melee one. It looks like a lot more of the same. You got that Chainsword Thunderhammer on the Black Shield, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on here. I do want to point out to everybody just real quick, a cool tech thing he did in all of these is he's got the Vanguard Veteran and the Biker, which means he can fall back and shoot. I mean, you can't with this team really, but I mean, it's an option. I know he's there mainly for the Melt-A-Bomb and the movement shenanigans, but there is that. And then the Biker also allows him to fall back and charge again, which for these melee teams is fantastically important to remember and can win you a game. So just wanted to point out that cool little piece of tech. We've only got a few more things to talk about in the list, at least, and this seems to me, when I saw the drop pod and all the storm bolters, I was like, okay, I know what's going in the drop pod, and it's this team, right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So
every game, in fact.
I have tried drop pod only a couple times, and it's been a fantastic failure every time. So explain to me how to actually use a drop pod.
So, full disclosure here, I did use it incorrectly in a couple of games before realizing how some rules interacted. And essentially, what I was doing was coming out of the drop pod and then spending 2 CP to counter stationary. But however, due to how the technicalities of the wording is, if you arrive as reinforcement, you can move up to your normal move characteristic, but you technically don't count as having made a normal move. Thankfully, it didn't make too much difference in the games that I did it in, as you can probably see from any of the scores in them. However, it was insanely powerful doing it that way, and it's still almost as good now. But yeah, so the drop pod, you drop in within 12 inches of your intended target with your 40 Stormbolt shots, and then you auto wound it to death. In tactical doctrine, there's not a lot more to say about it. It's usually point and click. I'll be honest, in 4 of the 5 games I played, in fact in all of them, I wasn't really able to get a great target for those because people were so good at screening out drop pods and where everything's going to go. The best thing that happened was against the Grey Knights. I put all 40 shots into the 3+ Invalid Grandmaster Dreadknight. And funnily enough, 40 shots killed him. So
auto wounding, that's a lot of 3-ups to make, invul or not.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so in the first game, they killed a Rhino. Be honest, not the best spent of 3 CP, but if it helps the mission, it helps the mission. And it allowed me to charge some core berserkers.
Always play the mission.
Exactly. And then in the next one, it was the Grandmaster. After that, it was a Redemptor. So they picked up a Redemptor with 40 shots.
That's worth it.
Which was, definitely worth it. And then into the Meat Mountain, they picked up 1.5 Talos. Right, I'll say that again. 40 Stormbolters, auto wounding at AP1, only killed 1.5 Talos.
Yeah.
That's how ridiculously hard to kill Talos it is.
Yep. I mean, the -1 damage doesn't matter with, what is it, Artisans of Flesh or whatever, but the 5-up invul, or the 5-up Feel No Pain is just bonkers against 40 shots.
Absolutely nuts.
How many wounds does a Talos have?
7.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's 14 wounds you have to get through. But of course, because you're AP1, it's a 4-up save, so you're already down to just 20 going through. And then, of course, they've got a 5-up against that. So
they'll save a third of it.
13 or 14. In this case, he spiked a little bit, but
damn, Meat Mountain, thick city.
It's a tough list. I won't lie. And then in the last game, I don't think I used the stratagem at all. Because there weren't any real valuable targets. Because it was a standard old style Drukhari list, but with 30 racks in it. We'll go into more depth in that one
Yeah,
later on.
absolutely.
Yeah, I do like the Stormbolter unit. I don't know whether I'll keep the pod.
Okay. So would you like trade roles then if you drop the pod? Would you be using the Proteus kill team with the Beacon and Jealous Chaplain? I mean, again, I know it's based on the matchup, right? Like like sometimes you just have to have that higher strength, higher AP, but this is more shots. So
it is a lot more shots.
yeah.
So we'll keep the Stormbolter unit in there. I think we'll probably look at maybe stepping them out of a ruin and then counting them as stationary with the normal move and then firing 40 shots at 24 inches. I think that's
Okay.
still a tactic that works great for them. I know a lot of people are looking at flamers. I know personally that I don't have fantastic luck with dice, but I would rather know I have 40 shots than roll 10d6 and get 10 shots.
Yeah, we've all been
Right,
there.
and that
Yeah.
exactly, because you declare your 3 CP before you roll the number of shots. So yeah, you can spend 3 CP and only do 20 hits on something, which would be very, very sad.
It is a
And
dice
of course,
game.
the range.
Yeah.
It is a dice game, yeah. And of course,
Yeah.
the range, 24 inches to do this with 40 shots is much better than 12 inches with an average of 40 on the flamers.
I am actually glad that you kind of brought this up, the whole probability thing. I mean, it's a dice game. Yes, we all know that. But one of the things that has become readily apparent to me, talking to so many good players is like the way everybody, regardless of army, regardless of matchup, the way you have to pilot your list is you have to be thinking about ways to reduce the chance interfering with your plans as much as possible. So like relying on, as a Grey Knight player, like putting half of your army into deep strike and then doing a whole bunch of 9-inch charges on turn 2 is a very bad idea.
Yeah.
You will fail most of those charges just through probability. But if you can maneuver your army, play KG, and then you get off a bunch of 6-inch charges, suddenly it's you're way more likely to actually get those guys where you want them. So just something I want to point out: when you're thinking about an engagement or a game, you should be thinking about how to remove as much probability from the game, this dice game, as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Geez, let's see. Going down the list here. Oh, hey, JP, if you have the Arctarius FAQ up, I obviously can't take the time right now. Did they point out that flamers work with the extremist stratagem? I don't even know if you're still here, but I would like that information because I know it was a question for a while.
Yeah, so I looked at this and I was a big sort of advocate for it not counting the flamers. And then I sort of asked around, NoobHammer, these other places, and someone had put forward that in the glossary of chapter approved and the core rulebook, where it says automatically hit, it says that an automatic hit counts as a successful hit roll. And because of that wording, the 3CP stratagem does actually work on flamers.
Okay.
I personally don't like it because I don't think it represents really what Deathwatch is doing with that stratagem, if that makes sense. I know I play competitively, but it's nice to be able to immerse yourself into what's actually happening on the table. And they haven't all gone suddenly, oh, we're fighting a knight. Quick, load the petrol that burns knights better.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I see. But so you're envisioning it lore-wise as like the sergeant is targeting weak points, or they've loaded special issue ammo for once.
Exactly.
Like otherwise they've got one magazine of special issue ammo. Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, I think that's the list. There is a Judiciary in there. You explained. And then explain to me what the armor Indomitus does. I forgot, and I hardly ever see it.
That's all right. So the armor Indomitus is a resilience upgrade. So it's +1 wound. It's a 2-up save, and once per game, once you're targeted, you can declare to have a 3-up invuln until the end of the phase. It might not look like much, but this Judicia has won me games. In particular, he was very strong into Grey Knights. Fight last, incredibly powerful, especially for my army. And the fact that this guy doesn't die, you can have a turn where he's transhuman, got a 3-up invuln. It's going to take a lot to kill this guy with those 2 buffs on him.
Yeah, and then if only one unit gets stuck in on him, he's also going to fight last. So that's another durability upgrade in a way. So,
and he's no joke in combat either. 5 attacks, strength 7, AP 4 in assault doctrine, 2 damage, 6 as a mortal wound. So he's killed a fair few Grey Knights. I'll tell you that much.
Man, you're like just stabbing me right in the heart every time you mention killing Grey Knights.
I'm trying to convert you to just playing Deathwatch.
Oh, I got both. Yeah. I love them both. Grey Knights were my first army, so it's hard for me to not always love them. I loved them even when they were terrible. Great. Well, let's get into your matchups then. So round 1 was against Chaos Space Marines. And I don't know if it was a combination of different Chaos Space Marines, but you won.
World Eaters. Just World Eaters.
But you won this one handily, 100 points. So perfect game to 31.
Yeah. So in this one, I saw the matchup, and if you're experienced enough with the list, you sort of know what about the score you can get. And then when you look at the mission, you look at, well, what's the maximum I can score? I'm not interested in any kind of submarining, avoiding good players, any of that stuff. As you'll see later on, I want to get 100 points every game if I can. So I actually took the secondary cull order, which is after deployment. So this is the Deathwatch one. After deployment, your opponent picks a battlefield role, then you pick a battlefield role, and then they pick the last battlefield role. And at the end of the game, if you've destroyed all of the units in their army from those battlefield roles, you get 5 points for each. And that was one of the only ways I could see of me getting 100 points from that match, was if I did manage to kill all of those battlefield roles.
Man, what an amazing place to be. Like, it's still just I'd probably bring this up every video I ever do, but it amazes me the amount of knowledge that seasoned players have when they go into a matchup, and they, I forgot Cull Order existed. It's never on my radar. If I was in a tournament, I would be like, what, I usually go in with a game plan. Generally, I want these 3 secondaries. If I'm going against Xenos, I might use one of the Deathwatch ones, blah, 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 right? That would be my general game plan. And you're just like, nope, I know in this specific matchup, on this specific mission, at this specific time, I need this really awkward. It is a very awkward secondary.
It is a fair bit awkward, yeah.
Yeah, but you were like, nope, I got it, and it worked out. I mean, you clearly scored it all because you got a perfect game.
Yeah. It was an interesting one. So when you look at an enemy list, if they've got quite a few different battlefield roles, then it's usually quite a safe pick. Cull Order can be a safe pick for 10 points as well. And if you're really stuck for options, picking a drop pod or a Rhino dedicated transport, 5 points, that's easy victory points, right? Of course you're going to do that. And in this game, it was fast attack, so 5 Warp Talons and then 2 units of 5 Raptors. It was the HQs, so all of his characters, Khan, an Exalted Champion, and the Demon Prince, and then his Leviathan Dread, which is one that he picked, which was a very good pick because it was the last thing to die, and it's very hard to kill a Leviathan Dread.
God, those models. Such a cool model too.
Yeah.
The Leviathan.
So cool.
Nice. The Leviathan Dread in any flavor, chaos or not, is probably one of my favorite models in the whole game. It's
very nice. I do have one for the Deathwatch. I don't know when it's going to come out.
Yeah, I've got one too. I don't know when I'll ever use it. It just sits on my shelf and it looks amazing.
Yeah.
Uh,
um, yeah.
anything else stand out about uh, that mission? I guess let me actually ask you again about Cole Order. Is that a secondary you would take in this matchup if Chaos Space Marines had 2 wounds?
Um, yes, in this
Okay.
matchup, yes, because he didn't quite have enough Marines that the 2 wounds would make me take something else.
Okay. I gotcha.
But yes, the great thing about Cull Order as well is the fact that it's in the kill things section.
Yeah.
So with my army list, because we're running 50 obsec models, I always take Stranglehold usually. And then, because it's quite easy for me to take people off objectives, 3 objectives. And then, oh god, what was the other one? Grind them down. Grind them down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running these big 300-point units. You know, I'm going to be
Yeah.
able to kill a Rhino and 5 Marines with 1 wound each, and then not lose a unit. So grind them down was a good pick. I nearly didn't get 100 points. I'm very close to finishing on 97 in that one, and that was because of grind them down. And this is another lesson we learn in the academy is don't get greedy, because I had killed a lot by turn 5, and the only thing left was actually a Rhino, and this Rhino had run away to the corner of the board,
Yep.
and I had to kill it with, I think I had 4 veterans, including from a Proteus kill team, including a sergeant with the big hammer, and then I had 5 intercessors charge it as well. The guy with the hammer only hit and wounded once with his AP4 damage 4 hammer. I was really relying on him to kill it. But he
Yeah.
only took 4 wounds off. The rest of the squad took it down to 2 wounds, and then the intercessors, with their bare fists, ripped the Rhino apart with the last few dice rolls of the game.
Ooh.
So, and then I finished on 100. But yeah, it was a great game overall. I would say actually, I wasn't expecting the Warp Talons in particular to be as nasty as they are, because they pre-gamed move with the World Eater stratagem, and then they buffed up to AP3. And against me, AP3 in combat or shooting is a problem because my Terminators, having a 1-up save, go to a 3-up save against AP2, but of course a 4-up in bun against AP3.
Yeah.
The Talons took out half a kill team, one of my combat kill teams, and obviously we killed them in return, but it did set me back
Very
a
cool.
fair bit with that. But yeah, don't
The
underestimate 1 wound Space Marines.
No, the Chaos book has like I've only played against Alpha Legion and then Iron Warriors, but the Chaos books have a surprising amount of like power in them if the opponent knows what they're doing. Like Obliterators are very swingy, but if they go hard, they go hard. Like the Disco Lords are just scary as hell. Even now with a 9th Ed Codex, it's still like I don't want to be anywhere near those things. You don't want to charge them. They have flamers. Like it's just bad. Yeah. So the last Star Strider says that he's seeing a theme where a lot of Grey Knight players also like Deathwatch and vice versa, and he's wondering if there's something about Specialist Hunters that's just so cool.
Well, there is, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, as a joke, when I picked up Deathwatch, my friends are like, wait, so you have an Ordo Malleus army, and now you have an Ordo Xenos army, so you have to buy Sisters next, and that way you have Ordo Hereticus. So so yeah, I guess there's just something about it, but so Jack has been waiting around for this discussion. Round 2. Grey Knights, you won 87 to 62, and he brought a wild 6 Dreadknight list.
So this round, I maybe, when I saw the pairings go up, regretted my 100 score in the last round a little bit. And this wasn't, I mean, the matchup was okay. I know I can play into Grey Knights, but the player himself, Vic VJ, is an absolutely fantastic player here in the UK. and an absolute gent as well. One of the gentlemen of 40k, as I like to call them, of our area. So yeah, drew him. I knew he was a fantastic player. I've never played him before. I knew I could look forward to a great match. And then I saw the list, and it was 6 Dreadknights. And I thought, well, I'm not used to Grey Knights having this many Dreadknights. I've fought 4 before. 6 was another step. And then on top of that, there are 3 different brotherhoods with different buffs and powers, etc. And so I looked at it and I thought, well, what's the main difference between this and other Grey Knight lists? And the main difference is there's a lot less infantry. And if you look at my list, you can see that there's 50 OBSEC models. Now, Vic did build into his list 2 different ways to get OBSEC. One is the 6-inch warlord trait. I don't know the name of it.
Unyielding Anvil. And
Unyielding
then
Anvil.
The other one is Noble Death, which is an upgrade for it's like a Wisdom of the Prognosticators.
Yeah, and that's a once per game command phase. Is that right?
Yeah, it's once per game. Yeah. But it's
so,
clutch. Like I use it too. It's very clutch.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can manipulate who holds an objective in your own command phase, you're setting yourself up for gaining more primary points than you otherwise would have. It's really, really strong. So secretaries wise, I took Stranglehold again. So this mission was Vital Intelligence, which obviously plays a huge part in the game. I've already mentioned that I've got so many more OBSEC bodies. Vital Intelligence, there's 4 objectives across the middle of the board. I took Stranglehold, as I always do. I took Abhor the Witch, and I took Bring It Down in this case, though I would have been better taking Assassinate. So he took Purifying Ritual. Of
course.
Trying to remember the other ones. Rod, of course. Grey Knights always do Rod, Purifying Ritual, and then Engage. I think it was Engage. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Those seem to be the go-tos.
Okay.
From
maybe there's
most
a different.
I've played against.
Maybe there's a different meta over there, and I think the new missions are gonna shake up this. But like for me, at least, I do Stranglehold. I usually do 1 killy one, and then I'll do Purifying, and then I'll just try to hold 3 and blast you off of 1, and I don't have to go to you that way. I think the new missions are gonna change that up. Also,
absolutely.
Also, not a great player here. Just want to throw that out there as well. I've only been to 1 tournament, so probably don't listen to me. Listen to Michael.
Well, against my list, there isn't really a killy option. And for Stranglehold, of course, he's playing against someone with 50 OBSEC bodies, so actually,
that's fair.
It might not be as good a choice. Otherwise, I'm sure in other matchups he's probably taken it and done well with it. So in this mission, the key moments, turn 1, I killed the Grandmaster Dreadknight with the 3-up Invuln by putting the 40 Stormbolters at AP1 into him. I did actually also have to put some Hellblasters into him just to make sure. But
stay down.
Picking him up early was quite nice. And then hold on, where am I? Yes, so he retaliated. He couldn't do a lot. His shooting went into my kill teams, but of course we're in cover with a Terminate with a Storm Shield, so any AP2 bounces off us. So most of the side cannons, obviously buffs 1 to the AP3 to make a difference there. But that'll only kill a couple of guys, and then we're still ignoring the AP2 Gatling silencer. So the Grey Knight shooting didn't do a lot into my army. But the game sort of culminated to 1 corner of the board. His Grandmasters sort of came in succession to it, and then tried to charge my kill teams off it. What we didn't go through in my list is some of the specialisms. So 2 of the melee kill teams have Dominatus, and 1 has Malleus. Now, at the start of this game, I picked anti-heavy support because obviously there's 3 Nemesis Dreadknights, and because you pick at the start of the game, and your specialism keys off picking at the start of the game, that gave me 4 rerolls to wound against heavy support with the Malleus kill team. Yeah,
As long as
I
you stay
picked.
in Xeno Hunters for that turn, right?
So it's an interesting one because the ruling word wise, provided you picked that battlefield role at the start of the game,
Mm-hmm.
your kill team gets rerolls against it. So
Oh,
actually,
regardless of what
you
chapter
don't need it to be
tactic we're in?
active.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So if you have a quick read of the specialisms page,
Okay.
anybody watching, you'll see that it does say if you've got this specialism, if at the start of the game you pick this for Xenos Hunters, then you get this bonus. It doesn't say anything about Xenos Hunters being active,
Oh,
just
man.
that you picked it.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if that's been FAQ'd maybe in Octarius or anything, but it's pretty clearly written, and I think actually it's probably intended like that. You know,
Okay.
we're already paying through the nose for these specialisms, so and only
Yeah.
one team's going to get the rerolls. So
Man, I've been handicapping myself. That's why I thought the Xenos Hunter Warlord trait was so good, because I'm like, oh, I get to
mm,
keep all the Xenos
mm,
Hunter rerolls, but it's like, oh, okay. So it doesn't matter when it's combined with a specialism.
that's
That's
right. Yeah,
really neat. Okay. Good to know. Good to know.
yeah, and you know, run it by your TOs just in case.
Sure.
But the wording's pretty clear on the book if you need to explain yourself.
That's
Um,
super
yeah,
neat.
so I had one kill team that was rerolling wins against Dreadknights with 15 Thunderhammer attacks. Um, eh, frankly, so the army kicks out 48 Thunderhammer attacks,
Mm-hmm.
and Dreadknights do not like Thunderhammers.
Nope.
They've got no damage reduction or anything.
Nope.
I had the Judicia making them fight last. And then when a Dreadknight strikes, if it's got a sword, one of them had a hammer, but some of them that did fight me had swords, and they might go for the sweep. If they don't go for the sweep, it's a lot less attacks,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to go on storm shields. If they go for the sweep, it's only AP2. And AP2 means I get a 3-up save with my Terminators with storm shields. So
Yeah.
actually, I'm quite likely to survive a Dreadknight in combat as well. And we've already discussed how their shooting doesn't really do a lot to me either. And then I hit them back with 15 Thunder Hammers,
You're
etc., etc.
you're making me sweat over here because I run 30 interceptors and 5
Hmm.
dreadknights.
Hmm. So
Well,
it's
though I do
interesting.
run swords on most of my guys, so -3 AP
Hmm.
is a little better, but
Yeah, so
yeah.
the swords are actually much better into my list. Vic was running halberds, and I do absolutely understand halberds into a
Mhm.
lot of other armies. He had 20 interceptors, um, and I think 2 strike marine squads. I don't remember exactly, but the amount of infantry, you know, he held back, played in waves, but the infantry just couldn't quite do enough, and I was able to sort of lock him in sort of that part of the board to stop, engage, rod. His purifying ritual options became limited because he wanted to either smite me to get through my shields,
Yeah.
or he ran out of units to do it with. Um, Obviously, your Dreadknights, they want to have line of sight, but if there's an objective on the other side of a building that you can get VPs for doing a psychic purifying ritual, then you're probably going to go for the VPs. Um, in this case, Vic only scored high on Purifying Ritual towards the end of the game when I had limited options left.
Yeah.
Um,
That's one of the strengths of that secondary is you can
mm,
do, 1 or 2 points for the first 2 turns,
mm,
and then you can explode outwards and get like
yeah,
6/6 and then 1 and you're set. Right? So
yeah, it's
yeah.
absolutely crazy.
It's
Yeah,
it's definitely one of the strongest parts of the entire codex is just that secondary. No joke. I mean,
yeah,
I know everybody hates being shot except you by that many dreadknights, but
mm,
like purifying ritual is primo.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so
The
this was a game that you felt like you were pretty handily in control of the whole way, or like was there a swinging time where you're like, oh no?
I would say I've probably felt confident most of the way through the game. Um, Vic is a fantastic player, but Vital Intelligence is really not a great matchup between our two armies. Um, because I was easily able to cut his primary down to 0 for at least the first 3 turns. and that's really harsh on the score.
Did you go first?
I did go first, yes.
Yeah,
I
I think Vital in Tell is one of those missions where you're definitely incentivized to go first, because you got to grab all those, you got to grab the objectives in the middle that are really close together.
It's an interesting one because a lot of people like to go second in Vital Intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm honest, I probably would prefer to as well. It is great to hold those in your command phase and sort of command the flow of the game by being able to move off objectives and them stay yours. But if you go second, at the end of a tough game, you can pick up 15 primary points because you score at the end of your turn, and your opponent's got less stuff left. And Vic, in fact, did score 15 primary points at the end of his turn 5 because I'd run out of units.
Okay.
I think going second on a hold 2, hold 3, there's changes coming anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
There's always been a strong play. Highlight for me for that game was how good the Judicia was. So there was a turn where the Judicia stood up to 3 Dreadknights worth of firepower and didn't die. He had transhuman in his 3-up invuln, and he just stood there and tanked it. He killed a Grandmaster in combat with his sword. Pretty epic. And then a following turn, he charged into 4 interceptors because he killed one with his pistol, which is AP2 in Assault Doctrine or AP3 in Assault Doctrine and damage 2. Pretty funny. And then, of course, his AP4 damage 2 with his sword, strength 7, and he just cleaved through.
So no save at all. Yeah, the one thing that people might not be fully aware of who are at my skill level is, on paper, Grey Knights are super scary, and they're obviously doing very well, and I'm not gonna say that they aren't, but like defensively they're not that good. Like, they're still Marines, so they're tankier than, say, Drukhari, but there is kind of a semblance there of, like, if you're playing with your infantry, you have to be real cagey, you have to really protect them. There's so much AP in this game now. And yes, they're 2 wounds now, which is literally twice as good as 1, but is not so much that you can rely on it. There's no way to get storm shields in the whole army except for Drago. He's the one guy that actually found one, and he hasn't told anybody else where to find one. But like, other than that, like, you can put a 4-up invul with a power on 1 unit once per turn. That's it. So all of the power armor, there's no way to get an invul. It's like, offensively, they're kind of like little Blade Guard. They have 3 attacks, 4 from the Judiciary or the Judicar, the Sergeant. And but otherwise, like, they defensively they're an intercessor. They're not that great. So that sounds like a great match. You were in control the whole time. How vital to you? Great pun. How vital to you is it in Vital Intelligence where you can move off of a primary and still hold it?
Very, very, very useful. Because obviously I've got a limited number of units. What it allows me to do is sort of set up a wave across the board where I hold these and then I move up to the rest of the board. And also just where the objectives are themselves, because there's so many in the middle of the board, my opponent needs to go to the middle of the board. And that allows me to set up charges, whether that be with the Deep Strike teleport or with White Scars. And then once I'm on those objectives, I'm getting my Stranglehold, because obviously it's 10 OBSEC models. I'm difficult to remove and therefore hold them in the next command phase. And then I can move off them and start sort of getting in people's faces.
There's a cat fight going on in the background. I want to take a detour from the rounds real quick because you brought it up and I've been meaning to ask. The chapter tactics, obviously this is one of the super big strengths of the Army of Renown. A turn starts, we just get to pick a chapter tactic. So I realize, of course, every matchup is slightly different, but what is the general game plan that you have for those? Like, if you go second, do you always pick Raven Guard, or?
So going second, yeah, you got those defensive buffs. If you're playing against Guard or Tau, then you're probably going Raven Guard. Depending on the terrain setup, you know, for the ones here in the UK, these large super majors, there's a fair few L-shaped ruins that have windows in. So if you touch them, you're visible. Obviously, not being visible is better than being visible and in cover. So standing behind a ruin means you don't actually gain the extra bit of Raven Guard where you get the dents. But against Tau or on terrain like the GW big squares, then Raven Guard's probably a good shout. I quite like Iron Hands for the Feel No Pain. It's a bit swingy, obviously, because you've got to roll a 6, but it's quite nice. Sure, I'm forgetting one. There's one that's normally an absolute go-to. If there's a lot of AP1, Salamanders is absolutely fantastic. And I did take Salamanders into the World Eaters round 1 because all of their Berserkers chain axes are AP1. And it was very effective.
I'm glad that this Army of Renown allows us to use some of those defensive chapter tactics, because the way Brotherhood of Veterans is phrased, if I remember right, it's like until the end of your turn.
Yes.
So if you pick Salamanders, you don't get the AP ignore 1 AP on your opponent's turn, which is obviously when you need it. So the Army of Renown allowing us that is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. One of the other ones I do like to start in is Dark Angels. I'm going to be doing that a bit more with a newer list, but because if you go up the field with your Dark Angels and then you get charged, you get +1 to hit, and I've got a lot of Thunderhammers.
Yeah.
That +1 to hit's really, really handy. And then, of course, combat attrition, which I always forget anyway, that Dark Angels auto pass combat attrition. And I do fail far more leadership tests than I ought to.
That's insane, because like pretty much everything in the Deathwatch army is leadership 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what can I say?
I guess you always roll high, right? And that's your problem.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I roll high when I don't want to. That's the
Ain't that the way it always goes?
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, chapter tactics, I quite like Space Wolves. Again,
that's
+1 to hit for my hammers. And of course, a free heroic intervention across the entire army. Which gives you that 1 turn of control. And then White Scars, I've already mentioned how the squads can move about 11 inches. That bumps up to maximum 17-inch movement. That is insane reach.
And then still charge.
And still charge.
Baby.
The other thing about White Scars is the fallback and charge, which is incredibly useful, saves your CP on your biker units. And then, of course, I've got my Stormbolt or Chainsaw units. If they fall back, they can charge with that. And then the Ass Blasters, as you call them, can advance and shoot without penalty because they're White Scars.
Yep.
That's quite often a miss part of their chapter trait, but it's actually really, really useful.
I love that you've really, like, your army, your whole army in this case, you know, you've really thought about the fact that, I mean, obviously advance and charge is good. We all know that. Drukhari get it on turn 2, and they've been, you know, kings of the meta for almost 9 months. But like, yeah, you've really thought about that, and you know, you've got it for your Ass Blasters, you've got it for all your kill teams. It's great into your characters as well. The fallback and charge, though, how would you, I mean, I guess you would if you're already in combat and then it's your turn, you would declare white
Yeah.
scars. Okay. See, I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
think of it as like, how can I get stuck in with most of my army? Oh,
Mm.
I'll use white scars. Do you find yourself using blood angels or flesh terrors at all?
Yeah, so Blood Angels and Flesh Terror is actually my probably second favourite
Okay.
choices. At the Factorum event before Leicester, I played Orcs round 5 and just went in with chainswords and with the +1 to wound, picking up Orc boys, bikers, wounding them on 2s with hammers. Um, Incredible. It came up very, very useful against the Meat Mountain because it meant that the hammers were wounding on 2s.
Oh,
So
meat
let's
mountain.
say I charge a unit of grotesques, normally wounding on 3s with hammers, wounding on 2s with hammers, and then because it's a Dominatus kill team, they're rerolling those 1s to wound against grotesque because they're elites. So um, really, really strong having +1 to wound, up to 3 times potentially. And I do think it needs an FAQ, but you can take the successor tactic Inheritors of the Primarch, which then means you can choose a first chapter tactic from the front of the book one more time. But of course, you can't use Inheritors at the Primarch more than once over the whole game. Um, so
So, I
yeah.
mean, what would be your wombo combo there? I've never heard of this.
So let's say you wanted to be able to advance and charge 2 turns in a row. You go White Scars, and then you
Oh,
use the successor tactic, Inheritors of the Primarch, for a White Scars successor tactic.
gotcha.
Um, I don't know how I feel about it. I expect it to be FAQ'd, so you can't do it. But currently, that's how it is, and it's not like it's broken or anything. It's
that's
just quite powerful.
that's
I'm a big fan.
So in that case though, you're not getting all of the white scars. Like you're not ignoring the advance and shoot
Well,
penalty,
you
right?
are because
For
you're getting their trait.
oh,
You
you're
just
getting
get
the
their
whole
trait.
thing again.
Yeah, but it's just called Inheritors of the Primarch.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it might change. If it does, that'll be a shame. But
I've like already learned so much. This is fantastic. Thank you. Can't wait for my friends to hate me even more.
and then if you play Psychic armies, you can go Black Templars. You could do Inheritors of the Primarch for Black Templars again, so you get the 5 up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds. And then there's a successor tactic for Warded, which is a 5 up against mortal wounds. So you could have 3 battle rounds of 5 up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds. And I did that in I think one of the battle rounds against the Grey Knights. It was really
Oh,
helpful. Um, but
yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful. That's amazing. I think somebody else asked this question earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but like, so do you just keep a cheat sheet with you of all 11D of the, of these chapter tactics? Like,
No.
oh man,
So
you are
I, I guess
organized.
I guess I'm lucky in that I can remember a lot of Warhammer related rules and stuff. And
Nice.
up till this point, probably hasn't helped me a lot in life. But now that I'm hitting these tournaments regularly, and of course I work for Vanguard Tactics, it's a really useful skill to have. Um,
Beautiful.
and I actually think part of the winning recipe of a game is knowing your enemies. And if you've got the brain space for it, then it's a great ability to have.
Yeah,
I have done cheat sheets in the past, and they do really help as well.
I do not have the brain space, so I rely on cheat sheets. And at my last tournament, I was actually writing down like reminders in big red
Mm.
pen so that I would look
Mm.
down and see it and be like, oh yeah, I have to do that. I forgot. Good
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
I
If I'm
wrote this down.
honest, I actually should have done a cheat sheet for this event, and I may well have taken the event because I forgot in the last round.
Oh
It
no.
was sweep and clear. I forgot that you could hold the objectives after moving off them. Um, and if I had my cheat sheet with me, I do also like to draw little arrows to where my units are going to go on that deployment map as well. And I color code secondaries. So with my cheat sheet, I color code secondaries. All the ones available to me, I rank them 1 to 3. So I've got like a 1, a 2, and a 3 for which
Yeah.
ones are best for my army.
Uh,
They're color coded for the slot that they're in, so I don't pick from the same slot twice.
okay.
And then I might mark each round which mission. Let's say this is a really good choice for this one, or this is a really good choice for this one,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've got a little entry like that on the top of my Green Knight cheat sheet too, but I haven't coded them.
Yeah,
That's
color
probably
coded it. Yeah.
a good idea. Yeah. I'm gonna remind everybody again. Please ask us any questions, make comments, whatever. We're live streaming, so you can do that. So don't be shy. Please leave us a question down below. So thank you for explaining the chapter tactics that you really rely on. That's really great. Let's get into your round 3, which was against Iron Hands, and it looks like you won this one also very handily, 97 to 30, or 97 to 36.
Yeah. So this was against another great player in the UK, Nassim. He sort of spearheaded Iron Hands from what I've read about events and such. And obviously, you get players sitting at tables or maybe watching the end of other rounds that are of interest. And there are a few people watching me and Vic's game, and he was sort of looking at my army, knowing that I'd won. Sort of, what does it do? Have you ever faced an Iron Hands Contemptor Dreadnought? And I said I faced normal Contemptor Dreadnoughts, so we'll see how this one goes. And yeah, so we set up the game. It was overrun, so this is a hold 2, hold 3. You can probably already see a trend here. I had a lot more OBSEC models.
Yep.
Yeah, as we set up, it was a bit dicey, this one, actually. I did take Cull Order again for this one. I think it was Elites, because he had 3 squads of Vanguard veterans, maybe HQs. Yeah, Elites was all the Dreadnoughts as well. Well,
yeah. So your Dominato's teams are gonna have a great time.
Yeah. So yeah, we played the game. He had a drop pod with I think it was 2 Melter, 2 Grav, 2 Melter, 2 Grav, and the Sergeant, and of course the Cherubs. And that was the biggest issue in the game. Was Iron Hands drop pod, so they ignore the heavy penalty, and in the Devastator Doctrine they reroll 1s to hit with their heavy weapons. So these guys drop down a ton of Melter shots and a ton of Grav shots. Grav being AP4 in Dev Doctrine against my guys, damage 2 flat, quite strong. Yeah, he took banners, and in my turn 1, I went first again in this one. I don't like going first, but you got to make it work, right?
Gotta have a plan.
I deep struck the drop pod, 10 Storm Bolters, picked up the Redemptor with 3 CP, and then I started in Blood Angels, and they made the charge on an 8 into some Van Vets on an objective. Other side of the board, he'd set up a unit of infiltrators to screen, but quite often I find people set up infiltrators that give me a really easy charge. So I white scars and I charged that unit and I sat on their objective and forced them to push me off. That already denied 2 areas for banners and caused a real problem on one flank of the Stormbolter unit. He retaliated really, really well, and actually picked up 2 of my Proteus kill teams, the melee ones. The one in his area, and then his drop pod came down and absolutely annihilated another one.
Oh, no.
And this was where I was like, okay, what's the best play here? And the best play was, and I find it amusing. Some people find it amusing, but drop pods can cause your army a huge problem.
I already know where this is going.
Charged 5 different units into the units around the drop pod, and then piled into the drop pod, and he couldn't shoot me with anything. So my entire army was safe. The following turn, white scars. I actually didn't even kill the drop pod because some of the Marines were still alive. White scars, pulled back, charged, picked up the other Redemptor. The Hellblasters picked up 5 Van Vets with Storm Shields because it's 15 AP4, damage 2 shots, so they did their work.
Yeah.
And it came down to it, and we called the game because he didn't really have enough to push me off his last objective. and his Volkite Dreadnought did try, but couldn't get through my Storm Shield saves on my Terminators because the maximum Volkite can be is AP1, and of course I still get 2 up against that with a Terminator with a Storm Shield. And that rounded out that game. My poor Judicia dived to the Volkite Dreadnought, rolling 6 6s to wound.
Okay, well, yeah, that's a lot of mortals.
Yeah.
When he said, "Have you ever faced a Iron Hands Contemptor?" What does? I mean, I've never played Iron Hands, so explain to me what that means.
Yeah, so the Iron Hands Contemptor Dreadnought, they make it a character, and of course that means you can't target it if it's within 3 of the normal character rules.
Oh, it's 9 wounds. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And there's 2 company veteran units in there as well with bodyguard, so they can stand in a building, not be seen, and then you can't shoot this Volkite Jed. It also had a Warlord trait. Every 6 to hit explodes, so you're firing 16 Volkite shots, and every 6 is an extra Volkite shot. And then you roll to wound. Obviously, 6 is a mortal wounds, and he would use the stratagem. I can't remember what it's called, but 6 to wound are an additional wound. So this one dreadnought kicks out a lot of firepower and has the cyclone on the top as well.
Right. We do have a couple questions from chat. They're about your list. They're both from PC. He's asking, why do you have Deathwatch bolt guns instead of chain swords on those 3 vets in your Proteus teams? Is that shooting worth the loss of the extra melee?
Yes. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Part of the reason is because I don't want to have to chop my hands off and give them chainsaws. The main thing is I've actually found those bolt guns to do enough chip damage to really be worth it. For example, in the very first game, I mentioned the Warp Talons picking up half a kill team. I actually elected to Overwatch with my 4 bolt guns and biker, and I picked up 1 Warp Talon, maybe 2 out of the 5, and that was so many less attacks that it saved the kill team. So just a little bit of shooting actually really helps. And the Deathwatch bolt gun, of course, can be damage 2. Or extra AP, extra range. And if we're absolutely honest, guys, those people with storm shields, they're the first to die. So not having those extra attacks in combat is usually a given, because they're dead by then.
So let me ask you a follow-up. Why don't you magnetize? Like, when I looked at how many options my Deathwatch army had, I was like, I'm magnetizing these bad boys. There's no way I'm gonna go buy 400 veterans and then paint them all so that I have every weapon combo.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier I started playing as soon as the codex came out for them the first time. So at that point I hadn't really been aware of magnetizing and such, and the collection I've built, there's still some of my models from my very first tournament after that codex dropped many years ago.
That's fair.
And it's just easier for me to chop hands off, glue things on. Yeah, I just haven't really, I've done some magnetizing for my Chaos Knights army, but at that smaller scale.
Yeah, I was gonna say a knight. A knight, you got like huge arms, you can pop them in, no problem. Yeah. I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment, because I'll sit here and just
if I could
drill out arms,
and it was easy for me to do, I definitely would do it.
That's fair. That's fair. And then the second question from PC is, he says, why do you start with 10 CP instead of investing in more Warlord traits and relics? And correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's because you want to use the Extremis stratagem as much as possible, and it's 3 CP. Yeah. So the original reason was because I thought I could do the counter stationary from a drop pod, and that, of course, doing that in addition to 3 CP, that's 5 CP spent. Obviously, without that now, I found that I had so many CP I could reroll a Storm Shield save, which I would do anyway, even if I had less CP, because I'm a madman and I love to
I often find, you fail a storm shield save, and then suddenly you get a flurry of fours afterwards, and you make 4 in a row, and it's definitely worth the CP sometimes. But 2 CP to interrupt whenever I need to, really huge. 2 CP to Brotherhood of Veterans, 1 unit, really huge. But yeah, mainly 3 C. That's 6 CP, the 3
Yeah.
CPs. Because you do it on obviously the Hellblaster unit, you might do it. The Storm Bottles are always going to do it, and then of course don't forget that I could do it in combat as well, which I have done into Death Guard, and it's very very effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just nice to have the CP. I am looking at taking some more traits and things with a newer list, but we'll see where we are with that.
Very cool.
Later.
Well, thank you for those questions. And again, anybody else who has any questions, please drop them in to chat. We don't mind jumping back and forth between topics. So, all right,
Yeah.
let's see. Let's do round 4. Or is there? I guess I ought to ask. Is there anything else about round 3 that you'd like to mention?
No, my opponent was an absolute gent again. Fantastic game. Yeah.
Do you run into jerkwads? I mean,
Oh yeah,
during really
definitely.
like regularly.
Well, I used to a lot, but I've moved, so slightly less now. It's luck of the draw, really. Obviously, I am Vanguard Tactics, and we have sort of a way of dealing with people, which of course we always teach our students as well. So it's never really an issue. And the other thing is, as I said, I've got the brain space for the knowledge of so many of these rules that actually I'm usually able to call out an opponent that tries to do something that they're not actually able to do, or game the system or whatever.
I don't want to get too off on this this little tangent, but when I went to my tournament, I made a bunch of mistakes, and my opponents would call me out, but it was because I was forgetting, not because I was trying. And they'd even remind me of like buffs that I had. So it's not like it was always negging me, but like is that something you run into a lot, where folks are actually trying, like they're bouncing dice off the back of their box so you can't see it, or is it anything egregious like that, or is it more like I just
so outright cheating's pretty rare, with the rolling a dice into a ruin and then bringing a 6 out the back. That old trick, or knocking models and stuff like that. Or one of the ones you do see sometimes with these more shady players is they'll roll quite quickly, pick up dice quite quickly, and you'll see that they've picked up misses, or they've conveniently forgotten about dense terrain, even though you reminded them 5 seconds earlier. For me, the biggest issue with sporting, and obviously this is a bit of a tangent, but for me the biggest issue with sporting play nowadays is top players. I'm not saying all of them do it, that there's a couple of bad eggs, whatever, but also experienced players maybe bullying newer players into accepting their interpretation of the rules, or accepting that they can't do certain things. And my only issue with that is the fact that it's so hard to manage, especially as a TO. You may have had it where you've played in a tournament and someone's told you these rules, and they're absolutely 100% that these are the rules, and it's given them an advantage. Maybe they've won the game on it, and you know that they're a very experienced player. And then you've looked back and been like, oh, actually, maybe the stratagem cost 2 less CP, or 2 more CP rather. And you realize that you've been sort of cheated or whatever,
man.
But you took them at that word.
just like, what is the, I don't know, it's so weird to me. Like, is winning more important than your reputation to these people? Like, that's so crazy to me, because if you do that enough and you get pointed out enough, like, TOs are gonna figure out, other players are gonna figure it out, and now you're that person no one trusts and no one wants to game. And when you do have to watch everything your opponent's doing during a game, that makes it a lot less fun. Like you're even more worried about what they're doing than what you're gonna do, which might make you make even more mistakes. That is awful.
Yeah. I mean, I've had to play games where I've had to be constantly on watch. Pointing out, oh, that was a miss. You're picking up misses, or oh, can we check that rule? That kind of thing. And they're awful games. And I will tell people about the bad experience with the game. I think everybody in the community that plays someone that acts in a way that's not sporting or necessarily fair should tell people about it, because that's the only way to actually deal with the problem.
Yeah, especially
Um,
TOs and stuff. Like
yeah,
you gotta let
absolutely,
folks know, and that way, if they have enough people coming to them, like, hey, this person is a dick.
exactly,
That part,
exactly.
like that person doesn't get to register for the next one.
Yeah. TOs
Maybe.
have a blacklist. TOs
Yeah,
have a list of people that to keep an eye out on. I
man.
think one of the worst cases of sportsmanship, again, another tangent. I played someone, and attitudes might be different across the Atlantic, to do with chess clocks and such. But
Hmm.
here, it's generally agreed at a top table. Regardless of how the clock's looking, you can always sort of see where the game's going to go, and if it's not too much effort, you can let people finish their turn. Um, we had a player who they weren't even running a clock, but time was running out, and they had a few minutes, and one of them decided to play their part of turn four, but didn't let their
Oh,
opponent finish the round. And
uh,
if their opponent had finished the round, they would have won.
yeah.
Um, and it's just stuff like that that's obviously literally affects who wins. Um, but a few seconds longer on the time for the round, and your opponent wins. It's not something I can't win that way. It doesn't feel right. But people have different interpretations of when you should finish a
Yeah.
game with timing and that kind of thing.
I would rather take a a wooden spoon and go 0 and
Mm,
3 than win a game
yeah,
by, I mean, we've all
yeah,
made mistakes. That's entirely different.
yeah,
But like actively cheating is just sounds
yeah. And my
ridiculous to
opponent
me.
round five actually clocked out. We were forced to play with a
Huh.
clock. He did clock out. He went to zero. But before the game, we agreed that we'd discuss what would happen to the end of turn five.
Yeah.
And we did.
Um, I know that the tournament I went to, they made it very clear at the
Mm,
beginning, like you are not going to. I mean, if you're running out of time, the
yeah,
player that went first does not get half of their round. You just stop at the bottom of the round that you're going to run out
yeah,
on. They made that very
yeah,
clear. So um,
yeah.
I appreciated that it was explained to me right afterwards, because I'm like, why
Mm,
would that matter? Oh, right, scoring, derp.
yeah,
But
yeah. Uh,
so
uh, yeah,
yeah. I've only got about 15 minutes and then I have to go to
yeah.
work. So
Cool.
unfortunately, we're gonna have to kind of rush through your round
That's
four
fine.
and
Yeah,
five.
absolutely. Yeah.
This has been an
Um,
amazing conversation. But yeah, I gotta go do my actual job now. So
yeah,
round four, Meat
yeah,
Mountain,
yeah.
Drukhari, you got 93 to 83. So that's a pretty
Yes.
hair-raisingly close game.
Yeah, it was. That came down to a couple of my kill team members surviving and being upset to swing the primary in my favour. Um, it was a tough matchup. Fantastic opponent, Ben Jones from the Vanguard Tactics Academy. He's a fellow coach. Absolutely love him. Yeah, amazing game. I couldn't kill quite all of the Talos. I killed all the grotesque, and I killed 5 Talos. Um, but in the end, it came down to whether I could kill Drazar on the middle objective, and I did manage to kill Drazar. And then he wasn't able to finish my kill team with the rest of his army. He had a core, an Archon, and 2 Talos, and they just couldn't kill the kill team. And then the surviving models were objective secured. Swung the primary in my to me, and I won the game by 10 points. Um, but yeah, it was a fantastic game. Talos are strong.
Yeah,
Um,
I find it
yeah,
fascinating that the army that is known for being fast and paper thin and melee monsters like now
mm,
has a build where it's like it's a little slow in plotting, and then it's just hard as hell to kill. I find that fascinating. So cool. I mean, not a whole lot to talk about there. I know Meat Mountain was big in AU for the last few months, and then once Drukhari got slapped with this latest nerf, it's like all over the place now.
Cheaper. So. Yeah. Absolutely. I could say more, but obviously we'll speed on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, any other big highlights or like Fight
First
is real good.
Really good. Yeah.
All right.
You can make me fight last, and I can still interrupt. Yeah. And against good players, it forces them to make a decision whether they do charge or don't. And quite often, it's like, no, I'm not going to charge because it's not worth it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, round 5, Drukhari again.
Yeah, round 5. Drukhari again. Obviously, it's a completely different list. Sort of the old style. Lots of units, lots of trading. However, this time he'd gone in for 6 units of racks with the -1 damage and feel no pain. Each unit had 2 of the flamers and a whip, and that whip is poison 4+ and AP 3, and the guy who has it gets 6 attacks with it. And this unit of 5 obsec models with the feel no pain, with the flamers, with the whip, 65 points. And there were 30 of these guys, and honestly, they are the ones who won the game for my opponent. Yeah, it was a really cool game. I think I did make some misplays, and I don't want to look back on it too much because I'll lose sleep. But I certainly could have played better. But in the end, despite how we'd both played, it came down to a 7-inch charge with a reroll with one of my units onto a rear objective of his, which would have sealed the deal. But in general, I would say my dice didn't do me any service. We were using tournament provided dice on the last table though. But that's just how it goes sometimes.
Is that is that common? Like, is that to just is that just to make
recent?
Okay.
Yeah, it's only
it's to make sure.
No one has loaded dice, or anybody complains about dice because someone had made there was a loaded dice at one event or something. Yeah, we could talk about that for days.
Yeah, maybe I'm just a naive idiot, but like it just I know it exists, but it just astounds me that folks would go through those.
Well, you're just a normal nice guy wanting to play Warhammer. So unfortunately, there are some people that, it was a fantastic game. As I said, Drazar went in and I killed him, and it was very funny, and I love killing Drazar. I'm sure everybody gets the same pleasure out of it. The Archon survived a lot longer than I was expecting. Lots of things didn't go my way, but yeah, it was a fantastic game. I forgot you could hold objectives even if you move off them as well. So I'll be doing a cheat sheet for every tournament I go to now, just to make sure I don't forget anything.
That's a good call. I was surprised when I went to my first tournament about you're like, oh, I have 3 hours, that's a lot, and then you realize well, the first 20 minutes are just talking about your guys' army, and then you have to agree on what all the terrain does, and then we were allowed to move scatter if we didn't want it on the board, so they had to discuss that. So I found that having time to even write notes was like it was really hard to find that time. 3 hours goes by real fast, so a cheat sheet's probably a great idea because you don't have
credit. Credit to my opponent. Of course, he played a fantastic game.
And he came in second at the whole event.
Came in second of the whole event. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Do you think this thin city, as he called it, might see some more play, or is it just pretty much the Talos is too good?
I think it really depends on the player. Drukhari, obviously, they've still got so many units they can throw out and do different things. If you play a game like he did, where it was all about move blocking or just nabbing objectives with fire and fade, that kind of thing, then you can get a lot of leverage out of those cheap units. Racks, I think, are a problem at the moment, not so much Talos. And I think we're going to see a lot more of them coming up alongside, Talos and Grotesques.
And I don't want to sound like a big baby. I might
Hmm.
anyway. But I mean, Drukhari have been one of the best armies in the game for like 9 months.
Yeah.
And I wasn't around at the end of 8th when apparently Iron Hands was just like menacing and awful. But
Yeah.
it, you know, I would like to see some changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I won't lie. I would as well. I
Yeah.
think my main issue at the moment is Jazar very strong, but he's pointed. That's fine. But when you have Jazar, the Succubus with the Triptych Whip, and then the Archon with the Jin Blade that fights twice and makes you fight last, 3 characters can kill most of an army on their own, provided you don't do sneaky stuff or manage to get in on them.
Yeah.
Because that witch will pick up 10 marines for
Eh,
nothing, and Jazar
eh,
will pick up anything
yep.
in the game.
And
And
2
then
of
the Archon,
those have already been nerfed once.
yes.
The
Yeah.
Triptych Whip used to be even more ridiculous.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they've changed the points, and I think they maybe need to actually look at the Triptych Whip's
Yeah.
profile.
Well, I've got maybe about 5-7 minutes. If anybody has any last questions, now is your time to swoop in there. Otherwise, I'm just gonna start my conclusion. So thank you again, Michael, for showing up. It's been just over 2 hours now. You have been an amazing guest. You are very insightful. You clearly know what you're doing with your tournament results, and it's a testament to Vanguard Tactics that now 2 of you have been on my show. So thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome. Do stay tuned to Vanguard Tactics. We've got new things coming out, new year, new academy. We've got a new product coming out to teach you how to play the game as well for any new players. So yeah, do give us a follow. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. We have one last question here, or I guess 2. Oh, nice, Starfighter or Star Strider. 1 actually. That's clearly serious. PC is asking, are you going to stick with this exact list, or are you going to try Indomitors and Spectrus kill teams instead?
I'll probably leave the Spectrus behind because they don't quite give you enough leverage for their points. I am looking at running a 5 aggressor, 5 heavy intercessor team instead of the Hell Blasters. Sorry, Rick, but
my ass blasters.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you have the if you see the need, then don't keep them in there for me. Not that you would, but and then Martin swinging in. Yeah, he's asking about the Indomitor kill team, which was going to be my follow up. You would go all bolt, I assume, because it's a ton of shots.
Yeah, average 45 with your bolt guns. I would also say don't put more than 1 Indomitor kill team in my personal opinion.
Okay.
I hate heavy intercessors. They're 140 points. They don't really do much. So, yeah, that's my advice.
Okay. Well, I am going to call it here. I'm sorry for those last few questions, but I gotta go do my real life thing now. So thank you again, Michael, very much, and I'm sure I will keep annoying you online with all of my stupid questions. So and to all of you out there, thank you for showing up. Thank you for your questions, and don't forget to